Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a real deep cut into a problem that affects just so many people: chronic shoulder pain. Specifically, what's called rotator cuff related shoulder pain, or RCRSP. If you've ever had that nagging shoulder, you know exactly what we're talking about.
It is an incredibly common diagnosis. And, the good news is the primary treatment is usually exercise.
Right, but that's where it gets complicated.
That's where the debate starts. It's not just if you should exercise, but really how you should be doing it.
Exactly. For years, there's been this assumption that people with chronic shoulder pain must have some kind of issue with their internal coordination.
We call that a proprioceptive deficit. And if you haven't heard that term, proprioception is basically your body's sixth sense.
A sense of where you are in space.
Exactly. It's that unconscious ability to know where your arm is, how it's moving, even with your eyes closed. It's absolutely essential for any kind of smooth movement.
And the thinking has always been, well, if that sense is broken in RCRSP, then we have to fix it, right?
Yeah, right. Let's design specific exercises to target that proprioception. That's been the theory.
But the evidence isn't so clear.
Not at all. If you really dig into the literature, it's pretty muddy. It's conflicting on whether these deficits are even a universal thing in RCRSP patients. And then, the next question is whether adding these complex exercises actually gives you any extra benefit.
Which is a huge question, considering the time and cost involved.
For sure.
So that brings us to our mission for today. We found a major 2025 randomized controlled trial that really aimed to settle this debate. Does combining those specialized proprioceptive exercises with standard strength training give you a superior result compared to just the strength training alone?
And this study, it's a fantastic piece of work. They took 70 people with chronic RCRSP, so symptoms for more than 12 weeks.
Okay.
Ages 18 to 55. They were randomized into 2 different groups for an 8-week program, and then they followed them for a full 5 months after. It's really the gold standard design for this kind of question.
Let's get into what these 2 groups were actually doing, because that's where the magic is. Let's start with the control group, the baseline.
So the control group got what you'd call a standard but very methodical muscle strengthening program, just SE.
Focus on the rotator cuff and scapular muscles, I assume?
Exactly, the foundational stuff. But what's really key here is how progressive it was. This wasn't just, simple resistance bands. They started them at 60% of their 1 repetition maximum, their 1 RM.
Wow, okay.
And over 8 weeks, they gradually ramped that up to a really challenging 90% of their 1 RM.
So this is serious strength work. We're talking about exercises like the classic lateral rotation, lying on your side, and the full can exercise.
Those are the ones, yes. This was designed to be, the best possible version of a traditional strengthening program.
Okay. Now, for the experimental group, they did all of that.
They did the exact same progressive strengthening exercises. But on top of that, they added the specific specialized proprioceptive exercises, the PE component.
So how do they make it more complex? What does that actually look like?
They use tools to basically disrupt and then retrain that sense of joint position. For instance, they used a big exercise ball.
Okay.
Participants would lie down and have to balance this ball while doing simple elbow movements. But then they'd progress it. First, eyes open, then eyes closed.
Ah, taking away the visual feedback.
Exactly. And then they'd even have them do it while standing on 1 foot. A huge balance challenge that forces the shoulder to stabilize.
I can immediately see the logic there. You're creating instability to basically force the nervous system to get smarter.
You've got it.
Yeah.
They also used a laser pointer.
A laser pointer.
Yeah, a laser pointer. They'd attach it to the participant, who would then have to aim it at a target on the wall while doing smooth shoulder movements.
So it's about precision and motor control, not just strength.
Precisely. And again, they'd eventually do it with their eyes closed, relying purely on that internal sense of where their arm is.
That sounds incredibly intensive. And there was this one detail in the method that really stood out to me. Both groups were told it was okay to feel pain during the sessions.
Yes, up to a 5 out of 10 on the pain scale, as long as it settled down by the next day.
That seems critical.
Oh, it's a huge piece of this. They were essentially, with a therapist guiding them, pushing past that fear of pain. They were learning in real time that movement doesn't equal damage.
Which probably has a huge impact on the other things we'll talk about later.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's get to it. Did all that extra effort with the lasers and balance balls actually pay off? How did they measure success?
The main scorecard, the primary outcome, was the Shoulder Pain and Disability Index, or SPEEDI. It's a scale from 0 to 100. 0 is no pain, 100 is the worst imaginable.
And what's a meaningful change on that scale? Like if your score goes down by 5 points, does that matter?
Probably not. And that's why they use something called the Minimal Clinically Important Difference, the MCID, For the Spady, that number is 13.2 points.
Got it. So you need to improve by at least 13.2 points for it to be considered a real meaningful change for the patient.
That's the threshold.
So the moment of truth. Did the group doing the extra proprioceptive work do better?
Well, the main conclusion at that 2-month mark was a flat-out no.
Wow.
Combining the proprioceptive exercises with strengthening did not lead to significantly greater improvements on that Spady score. The hypothesis was basically refuted.
So the complex stuff failed to prove it was superior. That's a huge finding for clinicians. But here's the part we can't just gloss over.
Right.
Even though one group didn't beat the other, they both did incredibly well.
They knocked it out of the park. This is the real headline, I think. Both groups had huge clinically important success. They started with an average Spady score of around 56.
So pretty disabled.
Very.
Yeah.
And after just 2 months, both groups dropped to a score of less than 30.
Wait, 56 down to under 30? That's an improvement of over 26 points on average. And the threshold for a meaningful change was 13.2, so they almost doubled the improvement needed.
Exactly. It just confirms that a structured, progressive exercise program, any kind of structured program, is profoundly effective for this condition.
But you mentioned they tracked them for 5 months after the program ended. Did anything change in the long term?
This is where things get interesting. There's a bit of a wrinkle in the data.
Okay.
While the overall result for the full 7 months wasn't significant, if you zoom in on just that 5-month follow-up point, something pops out.
What is it?
The group that did the combined training, the SE plus PE group, they actually showed a difference in their favor of about 11.4 points.
11.4. That is agonizingly close to the 13.2 needed to call it clinically important.
It's so close. And the researchers noted it. They suggested, maybe the benefits from this kind of training take longer to really show up in daily life. But based on the criteria they set,
They couldn't call it a win.
they couldn't. So it leaves this lingering question. Was that complex training creating a kind of slow burn benefit that the study just wasn't quite powered to detect?
A question for future research, for sure. Let's move on to the secondary outcomes. Because with chronic pain, it's not just about the physical score, it's about how you feel about it, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And this is maybe the most powerful finding in the whole study. Both groups saw major, significant improvements in their psychological state.
Okay, break that down for us. What changed in their heads?
Okay, first, a massive drop in pain catastrophizing. That's the tendency to, ruminate on pain and feel helpless.
Right.
Second, a big decrease in kinesiophobia, which is literally the fear of movement. And third, a significant jump in pain self-efficacy.
Their confidence that they can do things despite having some pain.
Exactly. They weren't just physically better, they psychologically reclaimed control.
And I have to bring it back to that rule we talked about, letting them exercise into a 5 out of 10 pain. That has to be connected.
Oh, absolutely. That therapist supervision, the permission to feel moderate pain, it's basically a form of exposure therapy for that fear of movement.
Hurt doesn't equal harm.
That's the message they were getting over and over. And the source suggests that this positive interaction with the therapist might be the real driver of these psychological gains, regardless of the specific exercise.
So it's less about the laser pointer and more about just doing something consistent and supervised.
That's a very strong interpretation of this data. And it leads us right to maybe the most surprising finding of all, the proprioception paradox.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Remember, the whole point of the experimental group was to add exercises to specifically improve their proprioception.
Right. So what happened to the control group, the ones who only lifted weights? Did their proprioception just stay the same?
No. And this is the paradox. Both groups showed significant improvements in their proprioception.
Wait, what?
Both their kinesthesia and their joint position sense got better, and there was no additional benefit from doing the specialized PE exercises.
That completely upends the conventional wisdom. So just doing heavy strength training improved their body's sense of itself.
The thinking is that any strengthening exercise that requires, dynamic stabilization under a high load like lifting 90% of your max, it inherently demands that the brain pay closer attention.
So it forces the system to get better.
It strengthens that whole sensorimotor loop. In other words, good progressive strength training is proprioceptive training, even if you don't call it that.
The benefit is just baked right in. That's incredible. Okay, quickly, what about the actual strength numbers? They did all this work. Did they get stronger?
This is another really curious finding. The strength results were inconsistent. Medial rotation didn't really change, but both groups actually saw a small decline in their lateral rotation strength.
Hold on. Their pain went down, their function shot up, they felt more confident, but they got technically weaker in one movement.
I know, it's a real disconnect. It forces you to ask what the real goal of rehab is. If the patient feels amazing and can do what they want, does a small dip in peak torque on a machine even matter?
It suggests pain and function aren't just a simple product of raw strength.
It seems not. The focus was on control and endurance under load, and that seems to have been what mattered most for their recovery.
So let's pull all this together. What's the clinical takeaway? What should someone with this issue prioritize?
Well, based on this study, it seems like a focused progressive strengthening program is a way to go. It works for pain, disability, psychology, and even for proprioception.
And it's simpler.
It's simpler, requires less expensive equipment, and just seems to be incredibly effective.
But, as always, there's a major caveat. The big asterisk.
The big one. There was no non-intervention control group.
Meaning a group that did nothing.
Exactly. So while we know both of these exercise programs work wonders, we can't say for sure how much of that was just the natural recovery of the condition over 7 months or, just the benefit of getting consistent supervised attention from a professional.
Right. We know they work, but we don't know how they stack up against just waiting it out. Any other limitations to keep in mind?
Couple, yeah. Blinding was impossible. Everyone knew which group they were in, which can introduce bias. And the 5-month follow-up had a pretty high dropout rate, around 26 to 29%.
Which weakens that long-term data, especially that tantalizing 11.4-point difference.
It does. And finally, the whole field is still kind of grappling with this idea of a proprioceptive deficit.
Like what it even is or how to measure it.
Exactly. The literature has no clear definition or threshold. We don't know how bad someone's proprioception has to be before these specialized exercises might actually become useful.
Okay, let's wrap this up. What is the single most actionable takeaway for our listeners from this deep dive?
The main takeaway is that a simple, highly focused, progressive strengthening program is an absolute powerhouse for chronic RCRSP.
It hits everything.
Everything. Pain, function, and it fundamentally reshapes your psychological relationship with the pain. Adding the complex, specialized stuff with lasers and balance balls, it just didn't provide a clear, superior benefit, at least not in the short term.
So keep it simple, keep it progressive, and keep it consistent.
That's the message.
And when we think about how that simple strengthening program also improved proprioception and self-efficacy and reduced fear, it really leaves us with a final provocative thought to consider. Is the true mechanism of success here really about the mechanical strengthening of the muscle? Or is it more about the consistent, supervised, positive experience, an experience that builds up your self-efficacy and tears down your kinesiophobia, making the specific choice of equipment almost irrelevant compared to the simple act of guided, confident movement? Think about that.